And one. Live.
Hi. Good morning, everybody. I am Rebecca Friedman, the director of Florida International University's Emerging Preeminent Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab. Thank you so much for joining us today for our inaugural chat, Coffee and Conversations, Cultural Institutions in Times of Crisis. We very much hope to have weekly conversations regarding the ways in which cultural institutions, both locally, nationally, and globally, are responding to the coronavirus pandemic. So today, I have the great pleasure of welcoming my colleague and friend, Dr. Jordana Pomeroy, the director of the Patricia and Phillip Frost Art Museum at Florida International University. Jordana came to FIU in 2015 from the Louisiana State University Museum of Art in Baton Rouge, where she served as executive director. Thank you so much for being with us today, Jordana. Before I start my first question, allow me to just tell you a little bit about the format that we plan. The format's going to be simple. We're going to simply chat back and forth for about 20 minutes, and then we will take questions from the audience using the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen for about 10 minutes at the end, and then we'll wrap it up. So thank you again for being here.
My pleasure.
So Jordana, can you start us off today by talking a little bit about the work that you do at the Frost, and in particular, what the Frost offers the community, both university and more broadly defined?
Well, thank you, first of all, for giving me the privilege of being here and being your guinea pig, your first to participate. This is so important. To stay in touch, and I think that's one thing that we're really doing at the Patricia and Phillip Frost Art Museum at FIU. We, of course, like every other cultural institution, have tested the bandwidth of our digital capacity, which is to say that we are providing new kinds of programming for both our FIU community and for the larger community, which is the global community. We have some really terrific programs that I have to say, I have to give a shout out to my team. Everybody just snapped into shape. You know, when this hit and we realized we were not going to be back at work for what we thought would be maybe a couple of weeks, we had to figure out how to not translate what we do in person digitally, but how to create absolutely new programs. I mean, even how to have a conversation like this is a sort of brand new, right? So this is all we've been doing now, so we're becoming quite expert. So we've created a Teaching Tuesday series, and that's one thing we're starting to do, is build a different series so that our viewers, who we consider our visitors, will come to expect this. So our Teaching Tuesdays are great, especially for parents who are now home teaching, homeschooling, with our curator of education, Miriam Machado. We have our reflections on Friday, which are my reflections on different works of art from our collection. And I'm really getting a lot of enjoyment personally. This is my background, I'm an art historian. So it allows me to actually sit at my desk and quietly think about do some meditation in a sense on works that are in our collection that I think will bring our visitors solace and interest at this very, very challenging time. And we also have, we're going to soon have Zoom tours of our exhibitions that are on view. And that's really unfortunate for so many museums. You know, you work for 2, 3, some even longer years on an exhibition, and now they're all closed down. So we were able to video our exhibitions, and in a short time, we're going to be able to have tours through with our curator. So in that way, we are trying to translate what is literal from our bricks and mortar to our digital presence.
That's wonderful. It really sounds like you're doing a terrific job of reaching a variety of audiences at all levels. I also wonder if once you have the digital collections up, if those will enable faculty at the university to kind of better access your collections and integrate them into classes, as they have to now go online and think about what that means for their students.
Yeah, that's so important for us at Florida International University. We are the art museum on campus. We serve the faculty and students, and we're increasingly trying to find ways to do so. Now it's kind of strangely easier, because we're reaching out. We're working with our art and architecture department. They know that we're available to them as a resource, not just our collection, but us. I mean, I have 25 years of curatorial experience. I have a chief curator. We've sort of started thinking about possibly offering a kind of series with different specialists in the museum, thinking about a museum career type of thing, or come and speak to one of my staff members. So these are ways we're trying to serve the FIU students, and true that the faculty have started to recognize us as a true resource for them in teaching. So as they better learn how to work online, we can assist them in that way. Thank goodness there are a lot of people on my staff who are a lot more clever than I am with technology.
I understand that well. Believe me. No, that is wonderful, and really speaks to the ways in which this moment does open up possibilities that we might not have expected, despite all of the heartbreak and hardship. Could you talk a little bit about something slightly different, which is how, as a leader of a major university art museum on a campus that serves 55,000 students and 54,000 students and so forth, how you as a leader are kind of confronting this internally within your institution? So how you're dealing and your colleagues are with the changes that are going on, whether you want to speak about the Frost itself or your interactions with leadership around the nation and the globe, because I know you're very well connected and very involved in various networks of museum directors. So talk a bit about
thanks for asking me, Rebecca. It's funny, I've really never more appreciated these affiliate groups. We have a university museum committee of the Association of Art Museum Directors. I'm on the board of the Association of Academic Museums and Galleries, AMG. We have the Southeastern Association of Museum Directors, and everybody's really pulling and leveraging each other's strengths, which is to say, new ideas. What ideas are you trying out that are working? Of course, as you and I were talking before in a sort of preamble, museums are sui generis, and this is, we use the word museums, but honestly, we have art museums, science museums. I was listening, one of the early meetings I had, one of the art museums also has live animals. And I thought, oh my God, I'm so glad I don't have live animals to say about. We have university museums and then city museums, municipal museums, museums with multi-million dollar budgets, which are the ones we're probably hearing the most from, because they're major institutions like MoMA and the Met, and then university museums, which tend to be smaller. We are in a good position because we know our primary constituents are the faculty and students. In a sense, I have colleagues already on campus who are willing and wanting to, sort of raring to go, to figure out new ways of working with the museum and new ways we can serve them. It's a totally different thing if you're running a huge city enterprise. And I think, nevertheless, we're all sort of talking and listening. There might be good ideas. Some of the larger museums have something to learn from, I think, the way that we're working very nimbly. One thing I can say that I feel like it was fortuitous, or perhaps this is the way it sort of always was. We work on a very, we have a lean budget, let's say that. We have a lean way of working. We're in there, that way, very nimble. So we have not had to take apart years worth of exhibitions in the long run. We are able to, I call it Tetris, we're able to move. I'm working with the curator. It's like, we're moving around different exhibitions to meet what our new budgetary needs. and then putting some ideas off to the side for better times when we think we'll be able to fundraise appropriately for them. So I think a lot of the smaller museums are probably strangely, kind of ready, better equipped to take on the new economic realities of these times.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. It actually leads very nicely into my next question, which is, I'm sure many of us on this right now listening to our conversation, and I'm sure the two of us ourselves have read about the kind of sad potential with this coronavirus and the pandemic and the economics of it all, that many museums that had to close their doors will ultimately never open again. I think I read some article early on that said 1/3 of the museums that had to close will never open again because of budgetary constraints, because they rely on people coming through the door and so forth. It sounds like the Frost is not in that position, thank goodness. But if you could say a few words about, well, two things really. How would you suggest the public can best support you and can best support, well, you and also your colleagues, if you have thoughts about that too, to make sure that we make it through this crisis with a very alive and lively cultural landscape like we have now? Because it seems like people are trying. We have the NEA and the NEH are coming out with calls and so forth to support institutions and individuals. But there is a kind of potential for a downturn in investment in cultural institutions. So if you would speak both about your own situation, but maybe some words of wisdom more broadly, how the public can support institutions.
Yeah. I mean, I also would exercise caution when I read those sort of numbers, and, there is a sort of tendency to say, everything's going to close, as I say, I have very clever colleagues, everybody's figuring out what they have to do to stay on mission. Unfortunately, that means for many, furloughing or terminating positions, but to stay on mission, to serve your community is first and foremost the most important thing for any cultural institution. And, they will come back different for sure, but they will come back. I think one thing I would say is to stay or even become a member, become a supporting member at any level. This is, obviously businesses are closed left and right. There's no reason not to look into a membership of your favorite cultural institution and say, what can I do now? We're all looking at our own financial pictures and sort of going, oh my God. But, if you think about it, to become a member, to support, it could actually be the difference between the life and death of the institution that you love. So don't walk away from that institution that you're loyal to. Don't shut down. In fact, stand forth. And we have, a lot of us have advisory councils or boards, and board members are stepping it up, to really carry their institutions through these tough times. I would say also, continue to follow or do follow, like for us, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We are at Frost Art Museum. That's a great way to show your support because we count this as visitor numbers. So everybody who visits our website is counted as a visitor number, which matters a lot actually for Florida International University. Our metrics are really important. So how many visitors do we have daily who are taking a look at our Instagram, our YouTube channel, our Facebook, our website, that kind of thing. It's those measurements are very important. Just like even today, our chat, we want to know who's tuning in and then of course how we can improve. So that's another thing, is we're really reaching out and trying to engage audiences to see what they want. What can we provide them within our capacity? How can we be of service to the larger community? And I think we're all doing this. I think this is what all the cultural institutions that I've seen, and boy, I've gotten so many emails. I mean, I'm sure everybody's flooded with emails, new ideas, and nobody wants to be not just forgotten, but also we are here at a time that's so somber that it's important to remember our humanity.
Yes.
And I really do urge people to sort of just click on, see what all the different museums are offering. Remember your humanity. You have maybe a little bit more time than you did in the past. So see what others are doing, and then, see what we're doing. which is, I was just interviewed yesterday by a journalist from FIU, and she said something very broad, like, why art?
Love it.
And, I mean, art taps into a part of our brain that we all have. It's this creative part of our brain. We need that nourishment. I mean, that's what makes us human. So it's, you know, even if it's taking 10 minutes to go to your favorite museum, go visit your favorite museum in Europe, go visit your favorite museum in Asia now, you know, and see what they're doing.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. I mean, it seems like there's many ways in which the community can be engaged beyond just simply writing a check or not writing a check for an institution in this moment.
Yes.
Creating the networks that you define, engaging with websites, engaging with everything digital that's going on. So that in a way is a kind of glimmer of hope in this moment for how cultural institutions can play such a central role. Thank you. I guess now, since we're getting on our 20 minutes here, if you would can you think through with us a little bit about what the future might look like for both the Frost Museum, but the landscape more broadly as well, because as you suggested, things will change. Inevitably, there will be change. Some will be positive and creative, and some will be less so, right? So if you could just, what are your thoughts at this moment? Nobody will hold you to it, but just if you have thoughts in this moment.
Well, I've been sort of following some of the sort of true gurus of my trade. You know, Michael Kaiser among them, who used to be president of the Kennedy Center, Elizabeth Merritt, who works at the American Alliance of Museums, and she's always been future thinking. You know, and the fact is, nobody has a crystal ball, of course. So there's sort of logic dictates that we're all going to be thinking more about how to run on a lean budget, no matter what size your budget is. You know, what is that going to look like? And the other that where logic dictates is we are going to be very cognizant of what we offer digitally. In fact, I meet with my team 3 times a week. So that was the first thing I wanted to do. The very first thing, because I have a good team and we work very organically, we're tight. And I said, I want to meet every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30 sharp. And actually, for the first time, everybody really is on time. And we're on the phone for an hour. And we're talking about the next day, which is actually also really important to punctuate the week, since we're all feeling like every day flows into the next. So, you know, the fact is that we have, I think of it as music. We have our right hand, which is working really very much on a daily basis, and we have our left hand keeping the bass line. So the bass, to me, is thinking we will be getting back to the office, and we need to be thinking long term. And long term, in my opinion, is a year or 2. So what do the next 2 years look like strategically for us? So that's the way I've been thinking about, you know, that we all as institutions should not just be working reactively. You know, there has to, I think that's the job of the director is to be thinking, right, well, this is great. We're keeping everybody engaged, but we will be back and we will have new challenges. And as I say, one of them is what can we do that's, we obviously will need to think about a component of everything we do at the museum will also be digital.
Right.
And we just hadn't thought that way. You know, for us, it was almost an add-on or an extra. Oh, let's put that on the website. Let's, you know, no, this is going to be now the new reality. Mm-hmm. You know, clearly, actually, some people are very much enjoying this new ability to sort of tap into different cultural offerings, whether it's opera, ballet, music. I mean, it's really extraordinary. And I think we unfortunately had this wake-up call in this way, but that's definitely in our futures.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I mean, yes, the digital aspect inevitably also connects us so very much globally to one another in ways that we did not presume or assume in the past.
Right.
So that's a kind of positive outcome. So we're getting to the end of our time, but let me just ask you before we turn to the questions, if there's anything you want to add, any kind of last thoughts to add about the Frost Art Museum and your role as a leader both at the museum but also in these national, international networks of museum and cultural leaders. Anything you want to add?
Well, I do want to add, being in Miami, I want to give a shout out to Eli, to Uli Arts for supporting artists. I think the idea of the starving artist is not just a theory, it's a reality. Our own arts community already feels the pinch, and more than that, they're suffering. So that's one thing, is to remember that artists in our midst need help, whichever way that might be. So there are a lot of wonderful organizations in town who are doing studio visits, for example. I had one of my artist friends said, who's going to be buying my works of art at this, like right now? And I said, I don't know, maybe there will be people who are sitting and saying, you know what, I need a new work of art. I need something that gives me pleasure,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of artists whose works are represented by wonderful galleries here in town who, and very reasonable, let's say, and I think that's something, is bring pleasure to yourself through the arts. Again, think about becoming a member. If it had just been on your mind, sort of vaguely, I should support that institution that I love, think about becoming a member of the Frost Art Museum. I'm pushing it only because obviously we need it. We need your support, but we need the, we like to know that our community wants to see us not just survive, but thrive in the coming months. Again, I think it's great to join in that way, and to follow different museums so we know that you're visiting us. That's really important. We do track those numbers, and all institutions do that. So think of that as a mission to support us.
Thank you. That's terrific. So we have a couple of questions. I don't know, do I say who they're from? I will. Why not? This is our maiden voyage, so I'll go ahead. So our first question is from Julio Capo, who is the Deputy Director of the Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab and our colleague. And he has a question for Jordana. He says, I wonder if you could share with us all what some of the strengths are of the collection at the Frost, and also share with us one or two of your favorite pieces. Great question.
Wow, that's great. We are like many university museums. We have a smattering of works from pre-Columbian to contemporary. We have a lot of strength in our works on paper. We have sort of wonderful examples of prints, especially mid-century American, and we have a growing photography collection. I don't know, something that just came to my mind, something that gives me a lot of, makes me happy, is we have a sculpture by Pepe Mar, which has been on view. And Pepe is actually going to be our guest curator for our upcoming exhibition of our permanent collection. So this is, I'm kind of letting everybody know that yes, we have a pretty tremendous collection. It's grown over 40 years, and this is I think comes as a surprise to many people, because the museum is actually 40 years old. In its current location, it's been here for 11 years. So when I came on board, I thought, we need to really play with our collections. And by the way, Julio, thanks for asking, because I have a feeling when you ask me what's in the future, I'll tell you what's in the future. A lot of museums, we are going to be looking at our collections because it's more affordable. Museums have so much in storage that they generally look at, because there's been a kind of, museums have been skewed toward temporary exhibitions, featured exhibitions, rotating 12, 15, 20, 25 a year. I think we're going to be sort of taking it down and looking deeply into what we actually have in our backyard. So that's something that we're going to be doing in the coming year with Pepe's eye on it. I also wanted to tell you that I think I mentioned this on Fridays. I am writing about objects in the collection, and those are works that I find are meditative. We do have, for example, I started out with a Buddha in this position, Vaheda Mudra, which is your fearlessness. And so I think I'm pronouncing that, Abhaya Mudra. So this is a gesture of fearlessness. So I thought that was a good way to start. We have a pretty significant collection of Asian art, which we put on view in an exhibition last year. So we are very much a teaching museum with, you know, sort of different areas of core strengths.
That's great. One of our viewers says that you have a fabulous sculpture collection and are leaders in outdoor sculpture. So just reminding you of that as well.
Thank you. I'm glad somebody noted that.
So we have another question. This one is from Meg Florian. So if I have this right, she's our Wolfsonian colleague. So she has asked you if you could say a little bit about all of the new initiatives that you've launched with kind of experimental initiatives online and so forth with the pandemic. If you could talk a little bit about some of the successes you have, but also the failures, things that have not necessarily worked as you kind of make your way through thinking about how to change the museum for more digital platforms.
Well, let's not forget that this is week 4. So we don't have a lot of track record yet to really talk about successes and failures. Maybe ask us in another 2 weeks. I mean, because life is it's feeling, every day feels like a year, but the weeks go pretty quickly. So I would say that, Meg, you know, to see what all kinds of institutions are doing. I think something that's been particularly successful, I absolutely love, was our out of the gate, our curator of education, Miriam Machado, did a Let's Make Slime video, and she did it in the yard. And I looked at her and I thought, she looks like Julia Child. And I said, you are the Julia Child of slime. And that was, we had a lot of visitors to that. And so these, I think, are very helpful, you know, for, as I said, parents who are pulling their hair out about what to do with their kids next. I anticipate that the tours of our exhibitions will be very well visited, because I've had people inquiring about them. So I think that's going to be, you know, in a funny way, that's probably the most literal translation of what we do on a normal basis in normal times. But I think that will be very successful as well. And I'd be happy to speak with you offline as well and continue that conversation.
Great, thank you. And now we have lots of questions coming in. We probably have time for just 1 or 2 more. Susan Gladstone, the director of the Jewish Museum of South Florida, asks you and suggests that something we've discussed a bit already, which is that not every museum will survive this moment of pandemic. And she asks if you will address the importance of seeing art in person in brick and mortar art museums post-pandemic. So what do you think about that? How important will that be once we're all done with it?
That is a great question, Susan, and it is a question that long before these challenging times, we were already asking ourselves as museum directors. I guess it was about a year ago, I went to a conference where everybody was talking about VR, you know, and why would you go to see the Mona Lisa if you can put on VR goggles and see it up close without any crowds? Why would you choose the former over the latter? And, you know, it is a difficult thing to articulate, but I did for the journalist yesterday, for me, going to a good museum and seeing a great work of art, a terrific exhibition, is like an extreme sport. I get a rush. I get an adrenaline rush that I can't get in any other way. So I think about people who love to bungee jump, or they need to, you know, take their mountain bikes and go over, you know, crazy terrain. For me, that's the beauty of going into an institution. Or I'm thinking of our colleague, David Rifkind, who teaches architectural history. You cannot appreciate Notre Dame without actually standing in front of it or going inside it and seeing how awesome it is. Our galleries, I think our galleries are awesome. Our grand galleries at the Foster Art Museum are just breathtaking. And when you see art in them, it's the entire experience that sort of, it oxygenates your brain. I mean, that's the difference. So I think there will always be a place for both, but now we know that there's a new and larger place for digital experiences.
Great, thank you so very much. I'm going to ask one more question. There are many others, so the ones we've not answered, I apologize to all of our wonderful guests for asking them. We can also answer them, type them offline, and we will. The last question is actually for me, so I'm gonna answer that one, which came on early in the questions, which is whether or not I can explain what the Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab is. So I'm gonna just very quickly take an opportunity to describe what the Humanities Lab is that I direct, and that Jordana and I worked very closely on. So the Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab is one of FIU's emerging preeminent research programs. It's the only one, essentially FIU now has a certain number of research areas that are designated emerging or preeminent. And our lab is the only one that's devoted to humanities per se. And our charge is really to create a kind of umbrella for all public-facing humanities work across the university. And in doing so, we work with students, with faculty, with staff, with the community, and we partner very deeply with all three of our museums, the Wolfsonian, of course, the Frost, and also the Jewish Museum of South Florida, and MBUS also on Miami Beach. So we have lots of wonderful partners. And the idea is to take the kind of very evocative Wolfsonian collection and think about it as the kind of basis for engaging the public in all kinds of humanities questions. And so we're in the process of building a curriculum, of building research clusters with faculty at FIU and elsewhere, and also ultimately creating a kind of humanities festival in ways in which we're going to sustain our engagement with the community. So it's a lot of work. We're in about year one, maybe year 1.5, and we're tremendously excited. And this here is one piece of that. And in these times of global pandemic, you can go to our website, which is now up. Let me see if I can get this right. WPHL.fiu.edu. And if you click on responses to the coronavirus, which is under, let me see, it's very clever, so it's hard to remember, publics, pandemics, and polemics. Publics, pandemics, and polemics, you'll see all of the programming that we are doing in this time. So let me take this opportunity to thank Jordana so heartily for being such a wonderful guest and for our inaugural chat. So thank you very much.
It's been a huge pleasure. Thanks for talking to me today.
Of course, I look forward to continuing the conversation. And thank you, audience, for showing up and for asking questions. Let me just end by saying that next week, April 16th at 10 a.m., please tune in as my wonderful colleague, Dr. Julio Capo, Deputy Director of our lab, will chat with Hunter Ohanian. I hope I pronounced that not entirely wrong, Hunter Ohanian, who is the Executive Director of the Stonewall National Museum and Archives in Fort Lauderdale. So Julio will have a conversation with him next Thursday at 10 a.m. Thank you all so very much and have a healthy day. Cheers. Thanks, Jordana. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.